Last week I made a video discussing the controversy about the Dakota Access Pipeline. I discussed several facts and misconceptions. If you haven't seen that video already, I definitely recommend checking it out, as I'll be referencing it several times during this video. Coincidentally, the day after I uploaded the video, less than 24 hours later, the Army Corps of Engineers made an announcement that caused the entire internet to explode in celebration. But is it really a victory? What exactly are they celebrating? Well, let's examine the events of the last week and see what's really going on. Last week, the governor of North Dakota issued a deadline of December 5th, saying that all protesters had to leave by that date or face arrest. He cited harsh weather as his main concern. You might want to remember that one for later. On December 4th, just hours before the deadline, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers released a statement that was immediately spun by the media. Dakota Access Pipeline to be rerouted. Victory for protesters, Army halts construction on pipeline. Army Corps ruling a big win. Dakota Pipeline project halted. Fate of pipeline uncertain. After hearing the news, the internet erupted in celebration. Self-congratulatory posts like "we did it" and affirmations like "see what activism can do, never let them tell you that your voice doesn't matter" were all over Twitter and Facebook. But behind all of this celebration, there were a few skeptical Debbie Downers. And they're right to be skeptical. Here's the memorandum that the Army Corps of Engineers actually released. I have concluded that a decision on whether to authorize the Dakota Access Pipeline to cross Lake Oahe at the proposed location merits additional analysis, more rigorous exploration and evaluation of reasonable siting alternatives, and greater public and tribal participation. Accordingly, the Army will not grant an easement to cross Lake Oahe at the proposed location based on the current record. I want to be clear that this decision does not alter the Army's position that the Corps' prior reviews and actions have comported with legal requirements. Rather, my decision acknowledges and addresses that a more robust analysis of alternatives can be done and should be done under these circumstances before an easement is granted. A link to the full memorandum is down in the description below, but basically it boils down to, well, think about it. And anyone who's grown up with parents knows exactly what that means. The Dakota Access Pipeline went through years of planning before it was finally announced to the public in July 2014. The permits and approval process began a few months later in February 2015, and this route was specifically chosen because it parallels the Northern Border natural gas pipeline and a high-voltage electrical transmission line the entire way, so the entire route has been cleared of environmental and cultural impact twice before. Before construction began, Energy Transfer Partners held 389 public meetings and 55 meetings with tribal leaders to discuss the pipeline and get public feedback. According to ETP, the Standing Rock Sioux declined every single one of those invitations, a fact backed up by one of the tribal leaders, Robert Foolbear. This is what the Army Corps meant by greater public and tribal participation. The opportunity for that was presented years ago. One of the two possible alternate routes for the Dakota Access Pipeline places the pipeline's Missouri crossing north of Bismarck. However, this idea is easily dismissed as too much of the pipeline has already been built and would have to be dug up. Remember, the pipeline is 92% complete. The more feasible alternative places the Missouri crossing just 5 miles north of its current location, which would extend the pipeline by 11 miles. Let's take a look at the worst map in the world again. As I stated in my last video, the pipeline does not travel through any native lands. The 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie was nullified by several other treaties over 100 years ago, so just eliminate that thought from your mind. But imagine the pipeline was placed 5 miles north. It would still cross the Missouri River, so the whole water protection victory isn't there, and it would still pass through the ceded, unceded Sioux territory, so the protecting native lands victory isn't there either. The argument has been made that the move would protect Lake Oahe, where the current pipeline is supposed to cross, and likely will cross. I didn't call it Lake Oahe in my last video out of simplicity's sake. It's just the widened 230 miles of Missouri River behind the Oahe Dam. If you were looking at a satellite image of the area, you wouldn't know where Lake Oahe ends and the Missouri River begins. But there are two arguments for moving the pipeline away from the lake. The first being that the Standing Rock Sioux have a deep spiritual and cultural connection to the lake. These are their words, not my words. However, those weren't their words when the dam was built in 1944, In fact, they sternly protested the building of the dam because it would swallow up 200,000 acres of Standing Rock and Cheyenne River Reservation land. I have a hard time believing that they have a deep spiritual and cultural connection to something that they hated when it was built and is younger than my dad. Sorry, Dad. And if you want to protect the lake, moving the pipeline 5 miles north doesn't do much. The Missouri River still feeds into Lake Oahe. The second argument is that this is the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation's water source, and that is correct. For now, the water intake is scheduled to be shut down in 2017, and no, not because of Dakota Access. A new water intake for the reservation 70 miles downriver has been under construction since 2009. Whether the pipeline is built or not, their water intake will be relocated. And if you're worried about the pipeline damaging environmental or cultural sites, rerouting it is the worst possible idea. The area where the Dakota Access Pipeline is currently slated to travel has already been cleared of cultural and environmental impact twice. Once by a natural gas pipeline, and again by a high-voltage electrical transmission line. Why would you possibly want to dig up, destroy, and possibly desecrate new lands, all while displacing local wildlife? Leaving the pipeline where it is the best possible option to save the environment and cultural sites. But perhaps the strangest turn of events of this last week since the December 4th Army Corps announcement is that the Standing Rock Sioux tribe is now telling the protesters to go home. They said it pretty nicely on the 5th, but they got a little more stern on the 7th, citing concerns about cold weather. This is despite the fact that the pipeline is not dead. The Army simply said that they will consider other alternatives and grant an easement accordingly. The ETP says they have no plans of rerouting and will build in the current location, and given all the permits and studies done on the area, I tend to believe them. Even moving it doesn't push it out of the supposed treaty lines or stop it from crossing the river. So what exactly is the victory here? Why do the Standing Rock want the protesters to leave so suddenly? Well, it turns out some of the tribal leaders have wanted the protesters gone as far back as October. Robert Foolbear is the leader of the community Cannonball, closest to the protesters' camp. He gave an interview to CNN. He says that more than 2 years ago, when members of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe could have attended hearings to make their concerns known, they didn't care. Now, suddenly, the crowds are out of control, and he fears it's just a matter of time before someone gets seriously hurt. Go down to the camps, he says, and you won't see many Standing Rock Sioux. It irks me. People are here from all over the world, he says. If they could come from other planets, I think they would. The presence of all these people has become a downright nuisance to his community, he says. Given the roadblocks, residents of Cannonball are often forced to go more than 40 miles out of their way. So not all of the Standing Rocks support the protests. Hardly any of the protesters' demands are being met. It's very likely going to be built in the same place once the environmental impact study and public hearings are done. But even if it doesn't, the reroute would still have it cross the Missouri and those treaty lands, which are now private lands. What victory was won? Why is the chairman of the tribe saying that the protests have served their purpose and now it's time to go home? If I were a gambling man, I would guess that the protesters who remain, who no longer have the support of the Sioux tribe, will be forcibly removed under the guise of protecting them from winter weather. I would also guess that the pipeline will be finished in its current location without anybody noticing. It's quite possible that the tribe came to an agreement with the federal government that we'll never hear about. Anyway, the no DAPL hashtag has started to die down and the internet is finished with its celebration. Any day now they'll be ready to start up their next protest du jour. Everyone will begin tweeting, liking, and sharing some other new cause that you need to be a part of. When I made this video last week, I suggested that this might happen. I just didn't expect it to happen so soon. So perhaps the next time you see a trending protest hashtag or your friends start sharing fake news about how you need to support this cause or that group, you'll know better. Hey guys, if you enjoyed that video or you learned something, make sure to give that like button a click. If you'd like to see more from me, I put out new videos every weekend, so go ahead and give that subscribe button a click. But in the meantime, if you'd like to see one of my older videos, how about this one?